A Plaguelands Media production.
Hey everyone, this is Hugh from Plaguelands Media bringing you another book review. Now, it's no secret that I'm a huge fan of the Coen brothers. I love their movies, the style, I love the genre, so it's always great when I find a graphic novel series that reflects that kind of darkly comedic film noir style crime drama. So today I'm taking a look at Volume 1 of That Texas Blood by Chris Condon and Jacob Phillips. There are 2 stories contained within 6 issues. The first story is a single issue, and then there is a 5-issue story arc. But you'll find that there's reoccurring characters and all that kind of good stuff. Spoiler alert, I do go through the story, so you will find out who the bad guys are and the outcome by the end of this kind of review / retelling. So if you don't want to know and you want to read it yourself, I would suggest going and watching another one of my videos. But if you do want to find out what this is all about and whether or not I enjoyed it, let's get straight into the next episode of. So this is Volume 1 of That Texas Blood by Chris Condon and Jacob Phillips. And we start with a story called The Casserole Dish. We get beautiful scenes of Texas sunrise. And then we are introduced to the sheriff of Ambrose County, Joe Bob. We get some little snippets of some newspaper clippings. He has just turned 70. He is at the station, and his wife is kind of hounding him to get a casserole dish from her friend Ruth. She needs it for his birthday dinner. He's talking to his wife over the walkie-talkie so that other police officers can actually hear the conversation and join in, because his wife doesn't like using the cell phone. He gets a call to go and help someone out with a rattlesnake. The couple are just talking, why doesn't he shoot it? He ends up killing it with a spade. And then he goes to Ruthie's house to get the casserole dish back, but she won't open the door for him. And he gets the feeling that her husband has been kind of drinking again, and people in town know that he is a little bit abusive. He goes to a store to get some food. The shopkeeper, this happens to be the same store that Ruthie works at. The shopkeeper lets him know that sometimes she comes in with black eyes. The shopkeeper thinks that her husband is actually hitting her. He has a dream, and in this dream he's talking to the previous sheriff whose job he took over, and that sheriff is talking about, telling him a story about when he was kids, he and his brother had a way with animals and had found a stray deer and had it in a cage in the back of their property, and his brother went off to school and came home and dinner was ready, and he soon realized that his father had actually killed the deer, and this kid went a little crazy, and ultimately what ended up happening when they grew up is that brother shot the old sheriff in the chest, and then Joe Bob ended up killing him. So this is a kind of a reoccurring nightmare that Joe Bob has rather frequently. He's sitting in his car It's the end of the day, and Ruthie's husband drives past really fast. So Joe Bob stops the car, and he sees Ruthie's husband covered in blood. And Ruthie's husband puts a gun to his chin and kills himself. And he was actually returning the casserole dish to Joe Bob. That's the first issue of That Texas Blood. And it kind of sets up the dynamic for what we're going to see in the next story arc called A Brother's Conscience. I like the fact that the sheriff is a recurring character, that he does appear rather prominently in the next story. This first issue had very much of a Coen Brothers feel to it. With the casserole dish just being almost like their style of humor, in as much as you can find something like that darkly comedic. Okay, A Brother's Conscience, Part 1. More than kin and less than kind. Joe Bob's wife wakes up to find him not in bed, and he gets a phone call. It's pretty early in the morning, and he gets called out to the body of one of the Terrell brothers, who this story focuses heavily on the brother of this murder victim. And then we come to Randy. Randy does not live in Texas. He hasn't been to Texas for a long, long time. And he wakes up because he thinks he sees his brother in the doorway. This wakes up his girlfriend, Sarah. No, she's not Sarah. Whatever her name is. And there is ultimately no one there, and that's when he gets a phone call letting him know that his brother has died. He decides he has to head back to Texas. She wants to go with him, but he says, no, I've got to do this by myself. You have to stay here. He gets on a plane, takes a bus, finally gets to the county where he checks into the town's hotel. The hotel owner recognizes him, and you get this idea that in the past, he and his brother were fucking assholes. Whatever it was, fighting, drugs, we don't really know at this point, but the people of this town have a long, long memory. He goes to the diner to get some food. The waitress there is very nice. She goes out the back to get the food. And then this woman storms out. I believe she's the manager. She refuses to serve him. As I said, the people in this town have a long memory. We don't quite know what he did to her. We think that it is something to do with his brother at this point. We also see this woman here watching through the window with the bandage on her nose. Randy recognizes her, and that's when Joe Bob comes in to the diner and takes Randy to the police station to have a word. You can tell at this point of the story that Randy has in fact tried to get his life turned around. The sheriff is just a classic small town film noir style sheriff, written very, very well. Everything in this book, the dialogue, the narration, everything in this book is written superbly, and the art fits the story absolutely perfectly, in my opinion. They get to the cop station. The secretary there at the station recognizes him and apologizes for the death of his brother. And it's at this point that the sheriff lets Randy know, we think, in fact, your brother was murdered. Something that Randy didn't have any idea about when he got the call about his brother. And that's where part one, I should say, of A Brother's Conscience ends. We move on to part two, where Joe Bob is basically talking to his wife while Randy is wandering around the town. He goes back to the hotel, and when he opens the door, Sarah is there, the woman from the diner that was looking through the window. It turns out that she and Randy used to be an item back in the day, but then he picked up and left her here, and she ended up having a relationship with his brother, hoping that there was something of Randy in his brother. But as it turns out, his brother was a cold, heartless piece of shit, according to pretty much everyone in town. Randy, at this point, doesn't really know what to think. He asks her, do you know who might have killed my brother? She drops a name. Also, he's trying to find out who hit her. And she says the same name, the same people that possibly killed your brother. But she doesn't outright specifically say they killed him. Randy jumps to these conclusions on his own after he talks with her, and ultimately ends up sleeping with her. When he wakes up in the morning, she is gone. He has a shower, and when he comes out of the shower, there is a man in his hotel room with a gun pointed at him. The man says, you and I are going to take a ride. An old friend wants to see you. Randy, rather calmly, is like, that's fine. Just put the gun away. We don't need any guns. At this point, Marsha, that was her name. At this point, Randy's girlfriend is trying to call him. But he, of course, doesn't pick up the phone because he's going with the man with the gun. Sarah sees them leave. The man, I believe his name is Fred, drives Randy out to the Kutner ranch. Kutner, of course, was the man that Sarah said hit her, and the man that Randy believes killed his brother. Fred leaves Randy out in the desert, and then a car pulls up, and out comes Kutner. Now, Kutner had a beef with Randy's brother because apparently Randy's brother stole money from him, and he believes he's owed that money, and he believes Randy has to pay that money back. Randy, of course, is like, fuck you, and so Kutner beats the shit out of him, and as he's beating Randy, the sheriff arrives, having been tipped off by Sarah that Randy got in the car with Fred. Kutner basically lies to the sheriff and says, this man is trespassing. I won't press charges if you get rid of him. And so the sheriff takes Randy and is going to drop him back at the hotel. And Randy says, no, can you drop me off at my family home? At this point, we get a lot of fantastic narration, just talking about how confused Randy is feeling and with everything that's going on. And that is the end of part two. Part three, we have Marsha with her friend Julie preparing to head down to Texas. She wants to know what's going on with Randy, why he's been ghosting her, not answering his phone. Julie thinks it's a bad idea, but takes her to the airport anyway. And then we have the sheriff who is investigating the murder. He goes to the bar and is talking to the owner of the bar about what happened the night of Travis. That's the name of Randy's brother, Travis's murder. And the bar owner says he believes that there was some money owed as the main motive for the killing, but it couldn't have been Kutner and his men because they were all at the bar that entire night. So they now have an alibi for the death of Travis. He's washing the mats. that are always on the floor near the bar, basically saying no matter how much I clean them, it just never seems to come off. So he and the sheriff have a back and forth. At this point, Randy is going through his family home, looking at pictures, reminiscing about memories. We get the idea that he had a problem with alcohol in the past, and he's kind of stopped drinking and has gotten help for it. He looks at some old photographs. Marsha has now landed in Texas. She argues with the guy over the rental car, and ends up getting the one that she wanted. This, I believe, just shows like how tenacious Marsha is, and how much she's willing to do to kind of get what she needs or what she wants. There's a very good little scene there. He wanders around, Randy wanders around the house, and eventually ends up in his brother's room, where he finds the remains of some drugs that his brother took. He refers to it as a shrine to an addict. And he also finds a gun, and that gun has one bullet missing. At this point, he goes crazy and starts like smashing the bottles and smashing things up. Joe Bob, fantastic paneling there, by the way. Joe Bob and his wife are having dinner, and his wife's like, "What's got you occupied?" Joe Bob keeps telling her, "I think something bad is coming. I've got this gut feeling that something really bad is going to happen." Typical, you know, Coen Brothers style foreshadowing there, which is really nice. Randy ends up in a bar, even though he hasn't had a drink in a long time. He ends up going to a bar where he gets a beer and a shot. There is one other customer at the bar. He drinks himself to blackout drunk, and Sarah calls and leaves a message saying she is in Texas and she'll be there very, very soon. Okay, A Brother's Conscience, Part 4. Randy wakes up, covered in blood, to find the body of the bar patron on the floor in front of him, with a gunshot wound to the stomach. He drops the gun, doesn't know what to do. At this point, the sheriff sees the new deputy that has been transferred, and has a quick talk and says, "Hey, listen, I've got to go to a ranch and I would love backup. If you want to come along, I'll show you the lay of the land." So she agrees to go with him. At this point, Randy is disposing of the body by throwing it down into the cellar. And then he goes and tries to get the blood off of his hands, at which point Sarah appears at the front door. She's worried about him, about the way he looks. The sheriff and the deputy go to Kuttner's ranch. Kuttner is just being an asshole here, especially to the female sheriff. Female deputy, I should say. The sheriff basically wants to know where he was that night and so on. And Kuttner says, "Hey, I didn't kill him. I wish I had, but I didn't. But I do know who did." But he doesn't tell them anything, doesn't give anything away, just has his alibi. At this point, Randy is trying to get rid of Marsha. And as they're talking, Randy starts to hear scratches and groans from the cellar, which means that that guy is not dead. Randy gets into it with Marsha. Marsha's like, "Hey, this isn't your fucking problem. This is a matter for the police. This isn't a fucking movie, and you're not Dirty Harry." And Randy is like, "Yeah, this isn't a fucking movie, and you're not going to get your happy ending." And she goes, "Fuck you," and leaves. This really good kind of back and forth. And she basically pisses off. The sheriff and the deputy are kind of hashing it out, trying to talk about what they know and what they don't know. And the deputy has an idea that none of Kuttner's men had any sorts of defensive wounds on them. If Travis was in fact killed by one of Kuttner's men, he would have actually fought back, which means that perhaps the person that killed Travis wasn't a man at all, but in fact was a woman, and that leads the sheriff to have a hunch. Randy goes back down into the cellar where the man is asking for help, but instead Randy just kills him and sees that there is a hole in the wall. He punches it open, and inside is all of the money that Travis stole from Kuttner. And we end on Randy sitting there with a gun and the bottle of whiskey. Okay, the rest is silence. A Brother's Conscience, Part 5. Randy, at this point, is just sitting staring at this painting when Sarah comes in. Sarah's trying to talk to him, and he's like, listen, just go to work. Leave me alone. And Sarah's just happy he's there, and she has him back again. The sheriff and the deputy go into the diner. The deputy's wondering, why are we here? Are we getting a meal? Do you think this is the right time to get a meal? Sarah walks in because she works here, and the sheriff asks her, can they have a few words? Randy takes the bag of money, and he heads to the bar that Kuttner frequents, the Lost Soul. He goes inside. He remembers, actually, a childhood incident. He goes inside, talks to Kuttner. Kuttner is like, well, at least one person in your family is honorable. And then he opens fire, killing Kuttner and his men. Pardon me. And then he goes outside and waits. One of his men was in the bathroom. He comes out. He sees the bag of money on the pool table, and he takes it. And then the bartender who was cleaning the mats a few issues ago, basically, damn it, I just cleaned these mats. And he's just looking at all the blood. Joe Bob comes, arrests Randy for the killings, takes him to the jail. Randy sees Sarah sitting in there, and Joe Bob basically tells him that Sarah killed your brother. She confessed, and actually Kuttner helped her hide the body and clean it up and all that kind of stuff. So we go back to Marsha and Randy's house, where they're looking through some of his manuscripts, because he's in fact a writer now, I believe, but it's not really touched upon in this book. And they're commenting on how dark his writing is. The guy that found the money, Dan, takes it to the big boss, the pool king of the county, so to speak, and basically says, listen, I bought you your money. Now that there is no one left, can I have the drug business in Ambrose County? And the guy's like, listen, I don't know you. You just come walking in here with a bag of fucking money. There are rules to follow. And then just shoots the guy in the head. At the end of the evening, the sheriff is about to go home when a cat comes and kind of befriends him. And the cat comes into the car and sits on his shoulder as he drives home. And then we find that as they're taking Dan and Sarah away to be processed, one of the police officers says, we found your two other victims. And Randy's like, what did I say, Dan? I meant Randy. Randy's like, what two other victims? The one in the cellar of your house and the one you dumped out in the desert, which is this guy. So he gets away with murder. And Dan finds himself permanently back in Texas where he belongs. And then we have some of the covers. Some of the alternate covers. That was Volume 1 of That Texas Blood. All in all, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. The characters were well written. I felt the story was a little, both stories were a little obvious and a little generic, but I think that's only because I am so familiar with the genre and the style. All in all, a great crime book and one that's well worth reading. I'm very much looking forward to getting Volume 2 and giving that a read. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Leave some comments. But most importantly, stay safe. Read a fucking book, people. I'll see you in the next one.